You have been investigating the tech sector now for more than a year, millions of pages of documents, live testimony from CEOs. Where has this investigation brought you now? Where have you landed?
What we've learned during the course of the investigation is that these platforms have enormous market dominance. They have really monopoly power. They really don't have competitors in a serious way. And what that produces is behaviors that monopolists engage in, favoring their own products and services, favoring their own, privileging their own goods. There was evidence of spying on rivals and using third-party data, doing things to protect their market dominance, hiking fees and bullying competitors. And, we've seen the widespread spread of disinformation that has obviously impacted the integrity of our elections. So we've seen a lot of anti-competitive behavior. I think the hearing with the CEOs essentially confirmed that behavior. There weren't really good explanations for it. And so now we're going through the balance of the evidence and developing a report that will give a menu of options really to respond to this market consolidation.
At the hearing, what responses from the CEOs either shocked or surprised you the most?
I don't know that anything shocked me. I mean, I was, maybe just because you sort of study these issues and that the acquisition of Instagram by Facebook was clearly illegal. I mean, it was a violation of antitrust laws. It was clearly an acquisition of a competitive threat, very explicitly in the documents. And Mark Zuckerberg just saying that out loud. He didn't really have a choice. We had the evidence, but it was just a surprising sort of how quickly he acknowledged that, yes, that was in fact the reason for the acquisition. It's the behavior of a monopolist. I was also a bit surprised at Mr. Bezos, in light of the committee's interest about the use of third-party data, third-party sellers, to inform the development and sale of their own goods and services under their private label. That is such a central issue to the committee, whether they're using their market power, their dominance of this platform to actually collect information to then use against their competitors on the same platform. In light of the fact that we received testimony from an Amazon executive that was either misleading or an outright false on this question, the idea that Mr. Bezos came to this hearing unable to say with any confidence that that was not the practice of Amazon was startling to me. You'd think that would be known by him. But, I think mostly the hearing confirmed a set of pretty disturbing anti-competitive behavior by these large technology platforms and really underscored the urgency of the work that we are doing in the investigation.
So in your view, are Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, and Facebook, are they breaking antitrust law?
What we're looking at is how does this marketplace work broadly? What do we need to do to make sure there's real competition in this marketplace? Are the existing antitrust laws sufficient to create competition in this space? Do we need to modernize and update those laws? Do we need additional resources to be provided to our antitrust enforcers? Do we need to specifically prohibit certain behavior explicitly? Do we need to make changes in statutes to respond to bad legal decisions? But ours is really about policymaking. And I think there's lots of evidence of anti-competitive behavior, of monopoly power by these large platforms. And so our goal is to look at what do we need to change in the law so that the antitrust enforcers have the tools that they need to do their job.
Does one company, in your view, pose a more egregious case than the others?
In my view, each of them engages in activity which is very problematic and significantly anti-competitive and an abuse of their power, their market power. They're different. Obviously, Apple, I think if you look at their impact on web development and the fact that they charge a 30% fee to be in an app store and you really have to be in the app store to survive, and that they use that's a pretty obvious anti-competitive challenge. I mean, they're all different, but I think the central theme is they are abusing their market power by advantaging themselves, disadvantaging competitors, bullying competitors, excluding people from the market and keeping them in their kind of walled garden. And so there are different implications, but it all gets back to the idea of enormous power of these large platforms, both because of their size, their market dominance, and the absence of any real competition.
Now, we did ask experts to review the sort of violation levels here. And while it seemed easier to bring a case against Google and Facebook, in their view, it was more difficult or unclear with Apple and Amazon. What's your response to that?
Our purpose was to learn about a set of practices to understand the behavior of these companies and what it tells us about the marketplace. What it tells us are the sources of anti-competitive behavior, how those things are happening and why, so we can fix them legislatively and through regulation and through a set of legislative proposals. So
what kind of legislation will or might the committee propose to Congress to restrict the power of marketplace platforms? So, for example, should Amazon have to choose retail or third party?
I expect you'll see some recommendations that will focus on modernizing the antitrust statutes broadly, just some updating. These statutes were written at the turn of the century in response to the oil and railroad monopolies. So there's no question that issue of, do we just need to make certain that they can respond to this new and different kind of economy? I think then you'll see a set of recommendations that are text specific, and they can range in a number of things, from easy things like portability and interoperability and how that might impact competition policy, requiring that, all the way up to things like, this sort of Glass-Steagall of the internet, saying you can either be a platform or you can be a producer of goods or services. You cannot do both because of the inherent conflict. So I think, there will be a whole range of opportunities for us to have a discussion as a subcommittee as to what set of proposals might specifically relate to tech. I think you'll then see some ideas about revitalizing private sector enforcement. I think there's a lot of reason to be thinking about that issue again. And then I think you'll also see a discussion of agency reforms, whether or not we need to produce some regulatory proposals, but also, are we providing the kind of resources that these agencies need to actually do the work we expect them to do? So I think broadly, those are the subject areas. The idea of what specific recommendations we'll make, and I expect there will be a menu of them, will be the decision of the subcommittee, both Republicans and Democrats, and I'm working hard to be sure that we collectively brainstorm and arrive at some real consensus on what those should be.
With Jeff Bezos in particular, you mentioned one instance where he didn't, or said he didn't have the information. What did you make of the fact that there were quite a few instances where Jeff Bezos said he would get back to you on that?
I think it's an example of CEOs trying to evade answering questions that they know, if they answer truthfully, will be very problematic. I mean, I take him at his word that he may not have known, and we follow up with written interrogatories to all the CEOs, so we'll hopefully get those answers soon. But, I think it was really important to have the CEOs there. I think they are obviously the decision makers in these companies, and what decisions they made and why and what policies are in place was really important for the subcommittee to hear.